The Democratic Party is cancer. The Democratic Party at the top down to about mid-level knows they're liars, knows they're engaged in fraud. They're totally cynical, and they're manipulating a base of mainline liberals and people that actually mean well but don't know what they're part of. I mean, the Great Reset is going to hurt everybody, Republican, Democrat. They still go along with it. And really, the Democratic Party has become a giant authoritarian cult that I've been in the jaws of, and I can tell you, folks, is soulless.
If you kind of want to know where the Democratic Party is going, and you see now the Green New Deal, I said this many, many years ago. I want to say it was 2000, maybe 2012. When I went to the Cancun Climate Summit. That was where Turner actually proposed China's one-child policy to thunderous applause.
I remember.
I was there. And I remember going, oh, crap. These people here are cheering for this.
I've heard you tell the story. Tell it slowly because I want to remember it.
Well, it was Ted Turner. I believe it was Ted Turner was there, and it was a Cancun Climate Summit, to talk about climate change. And they all flew in on planes when they easily could have done this, as we now know with the pandemic, could have done it by Zoom, back then Skype. And he talked about, population control, and he talked about how China's one-child policy was a model that could at least to some degree be emulated. And it was met with cheers at the Cancun Climate Summit. Back then, this was before it was the Paris Accord. It was called the Kyoto Protocol. I think it was the Montreal Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, and then the Paris Accord.
I remember. He's always pushing one-child policy.
Yeah, but it was terrifying.
I remember you covering it. What was that like? 6 years ago, 8 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. I think it might have even been 2012. I was still working at Fox News. And I remember in that video saying, it's not that they're pro-environment, it's that they're anti-human. And this was before the Great Reset sort of came about, but I remember consistently talking about climate change. And back then, right, there weren't nearly as many skeptics or sort of scientists who were coming out saying, hey, maybe we have some problems with these models. I was just saying, look, regardless of where you line up on this issue, back then it was still called global warming. They weren't really talking about climate change. I said, the issue is, and I went to these towns in Mexico, rural Mexico, where people would have to put, an ironing board over a trash can with a fire to heat their beans. And I ran the numbers and said, if you raise the price of energy,
it'll kill them.
It'll kill them. It'll kill them. And it's not that I'm anti-environment. I get mad when I see people polluting needlessly.
Hey, I'm all for catalytic converters. I'm all for scrubbers on coal plants.
But you can't force policy that kills people. And now we see this.
And they say it's about depopulation.
Yeah.
And we have the quotes in this book. And so my friend Shane Steiner that flew me up from Austin in his helicopter, he made a great point when we were talking on the way up here. He said, Alex, the average Democrat, the average leftist thinks they're part of the winning team when they violate your rights, when they default you in a judgment, when they censor you, when they debank you, when they attack you. What they don't get is they're building their own prison. And they think they're going to be the jailer, but history shows that they're not going to be the jailer. They're going to be the one in that cage along with the rest of us. And that's what's frustrating. And so this also covers the global social credit score and how the big banks are going to enforce it. And the main global social credit score got announced by this UN consortium just 2 days ago. And it's now been announced by Visa and MasterCard that they're going to follow this international UN standardization board. And they say in there, all gun purchases or all gun-related ammo or accoutrement will now be put in a code in the credit card global database that then tracks where you go and what you do, and is given to law enforcement. So when you go buy a gun at Walmart or a little local mom and pop, hopefully, or wherever you shop, you're going through the NICS, you're going through the instant background check, you're being checked, it's in a database, okay? So the idea, this is private corporations globally setting up a code for guns and gun accessories, and then they go on to admit when you read deeper, we're going to do this for everything now, for oil, for gas, for small gas-powered engines, for cars. California's saying by 2035, ban the combustion engine, or maybe earlier. It was 2035, right? And so, but by the way, you can't charge your car right now. There's not enough electricity. So that's where this is all going, is artificial scarcity, is feudalism, where they can dictate total control over us. And that's what the Great Reset is an artificial collapse of civilization to force us onto a Cloward and Piven model. And so that's why I'm so incredibly concerned that the social credit score isn't coming. The social credit score is here. And with it, if you think the left censoring you on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook's bad, if you think the left debanking you or Airbnb kicking you out is bad, once they have these codes listed everywhere, they're going to add those codes up in a score. How how much red meat do you eat? How much alcohol do you drink? How do you vote? And they admit that will then decide where you can go and what you can do. So it's not coming, it's here.
Yeah, and I had to deal with that, with PayPal, with Shopify, with our platform a long time ago, and Airbnb, but that one was kind of on me. That was my fault. We went down to Chaz, and we rented out, remember Raz Simone, the guy, the warlord in Chaz, who was sending out the rifles? We rented out he had an apartment that he Airbnb'd. We did a whole stream where we rented his apartment and declared it New Chaz. I remember he painted New Chaz on the wall, and he actually had a good sense of humor about it, but Airbnb absolutely did not. This is also why I talked about this earlier this week. You were sort of self-identified as a libertarian for a long time, and I always said, I'm kind of small L libertarian. I don't do that anymore. And the reason is because you still have libertarians saying, well, the First Amendment only protects you from the government, not from corporations. But when you look at and I'm not talking about a conspiracy, just when you look at the 3 whatever billion that Amex has gotten, let alone when you look at these banks, let alone when you look at the Section 230 protections for big tech, there's no longer a dividing line between corporations, a free market, which I support. These are effectively thug arms of the government, and libertarianism cannot stand up in the face of that.
I 100% agree with you. In fact, I'm no longer even a little L libertarian. I'm anti-libertarian, and I'll explain why. 30 years ago, when I was first starting to get on air, 25 years ago, Republicans were pretty bad news, wanted to censor everybody, had a lot of problems.
Right.
The left hadn't turned into this pro-pedophile, Satan worship cancer it is completely yet. So I didn't like them.
You just hit the trifecta. Go on.
So I thought, well, libertarians want to leave people alone socially, but they want a smaller government. They must be good. But it was big think tanks and big money funding libertarians. So conservatives would always think of corporations as perfect and as government is bad, instead of it being a balance. And so now the globalists admit they were building governments basically run by corporations, or corporations so big they operate like governments, but way more efficient and way more authoritarian. And so absolutely, to see libertarians defend the censorship and defend the open borders and defend all this, well, yeah, if Mexico was on par with us and we had a functioning civilization, then you can have an agreement, open the borders up. You can't when it's totally collapsed. That'll collapse us. And so, yeah, the libertarians are now just used to siphon off Republican votes and keep Democrats in power. And I also learned over the years that most of your high-level libertarians are actually Democrats. And they call them sleeper cells. Democrats have been caught on tape by Project Veritas and others running as Republicans, also running as libertarians to siphon off votes. And so it'd be nice to have another party, but then we'd just be in a parliamentary system where Justin Trudeau gets 30% of the vote, but he's still in power. So I think of all the systems out there, our republic form with two parties is the best. What needs to happen is when one party becomes satanic and psychotic and dictatorial, that party is disbanded by just a political realignment. It fades away, and then the other party splits in two with the dividing forces, or a new party is formed. Right. And that's really what happened in the first 50 years of the country. It needs to happen again. The Democratic Party is trying to outlaw the Republican Party because it's trying to outlaw populism. Populism through Trump, populism through the grassroots, the Tea Party, is reproving the Republican Party, has a double-headed enemy of the rhino neocons and the Democrats to deal with, but over time, it's seen by the deep state and by Biden in his red blood, Hitler speech as the enemy, because it is Trumpism. Not even all Trump's ideas. I have big problems with him. But what he mobilized or what he wrote in on as a surfer, that is what threatens the system. That's the American true populist opposition. And that's why the Democratic Party has declared war on it and says Homeland Security's main threat is populist Republicans, because that is how we take over the Republican Party and then revive the nation.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.